Was it any surprise that Cricket Australia made a mess of it? No, because they make a mess of everything. Why were they saying Langer was a legend? He wasn't. Langer was smart enough to retire on the same day that Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne retired.
Hello, welcome to Outside the Rope, here to preview an historic Australian Test tour to Pakistan, the first in 24 years. Always very exciting when Australia tours the subcontinent. Joining me to talk about it, former Australian captain Ian Chappell. Great to see you as always, Ian.
Thank you, Matt.
And Chief Cricket Writer for the SMH, Malcolm Conn, here as well. G'day, Malcolm.
G'day, mate.
There's been plenty of news in the lead up to all of this.
There's a lot going on, mate.
Yes, we've got a lot going on in our little show here as well. Has the dust settled after the Justin Langer debacle? Please tell me it has. Malcolm toured Pakistan in 1998. We're going to talk about your reflections and some wonderful photos you took during that tour, because it is a very culturally rich place. Has Australia settled its top order? Usman Khawaja back in his land of birth. Is he the man to lock down this opening spot next to David Warner? And is spin king in Pakistan? Not necessarily. We'll have a look at some stats that show the quicks generally do pretty well there. Let's kick off with something a little bit different though. Ian, I don't know how your preparations for overseas tours were in your playing days, but Marnus Labuschagne, he's always innovating. He's come up with I don't know what you call this, a peculiar match simulation, if you like. That's a rubber mat with, what is it, aluminium tin or something on it, trying to simulate the spinning wickets of Pakistan.
Yeah, he's got, it's a bit aluminium and a bit something else. But, you know, everybody's got their own way of preparing. I guess it's difficult for me to talk about because I played in an era where you had to work. So you didn't really have a lot of time to think about these things. But then when you went to training, that's when you thought about cricket. And it meant that you thought about the right things. When you've got a whole lot of time on your hands like Marnus, you come up with things like this. Now, it works for Marnus, and that's really, I guess, the end result. Does it work for you? If the answer is yes, use it. Yeah. If it doesn't work for you, discard it. And that's the way I'd be looking at Marnus. I mean, it's not for everybody. You know, I think there'd be blokes like myself who like to see the bowler, see what happens here, and you make up your decisions from there. And they don't want to worry about a kit. But Marnus works for him, use it.
Yeah, indeed. And it's probably targeted towards the kids more than anything else, Malcolm, and he's been a bit of a sensation on social media with these ideas.
Oh, he has. It's been everywhere, hasn't it? Marnus, he's a real sort of jack-in-the-box. The great thing about Marnus is that he doesn't lack any enthusiasm. He's still the big Labrador puppy running around, and this is just another example of how much he loves the game.
Yes, took a coffee machine with him as well.
Well, if you drink coffee, it might be handy.
You would have to pay the baggage allowance back in your day, wouldn't you?
I was no coffee, no tea, so not much use to me.
That's right. Let's talk about some of the serious issues. Justin Langer, Australia's first tour as a test team without him at the helm since a messy departure. Two sides to this argument, wasn't there really, Malcolm? Langer was hardly done by in the eyes of some as an Australian legend and a coach that did have some positive results towards the end of his tenure. The other one being the players went to the board a few times and said they weren't happy with the method. Which side of the fence were you on there?
Well, I was on the side of the fence that about 1,000 phone calls took me to, which was the fact that if you take the emotion out of it, because his mates are very loyal to him, and I can completely understand that, but there'd been a problem there for some time. And I experienced it first hand in 2019. I was working on that on the other side for Cricket Australia. And I stood in as a media manager for the World Cup and the Ashes in 2019, and I learnt very quickly to stay out of Justin Langer's way because you weren't sure whether you were going to get an answer or an explosion. So
right.
I can completely understand where the players were coming from, and I think it showed a lack of leadership from the board and from the administration to let things fester to the point where the players had to wear a decision which the board really should have made.
Yeah, I read with interest a point that you made, Ian, which I thought was just nailed the whole situation. If the Cricket Australia insists that they have a coach, surely then the captain has to have a big say in who it's going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cricket Australia's a really easy shot because we know they're not going to do it properly, and they didn't. They made a total mess of it. But to me, that wasn't their problem. And I just don't understand why, if you're bringing in a new captain, the first thing surely you've got to say to him is, one, do you want a coach? Well, the current guy is going to say yes. Okay, if you want a coach, who do you want? Because surely the coach has got to have some input, and he's got to have a bloke there that he likes and that he works well with. So I didn't understand why they were jumping up and down about Langer. I didn't understand why he's making speeches, because speeches are useless. And it was no surprise at all that he got punted. Was it any surprise that Cricket Australia made a mess of it? No, because they make a mess of everything. But why have a shot at them when you know what they're going to do? To me it was, and I understand why his mates, why were they saying Langer was a legend? He wasn't. Langer was smart enough to retire on the same day that Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne retired. Now, they were really good cricketers. Justin Langer wasn't in their category, as far as I was concerned. I mean, as an example, Damien Martin, in my opinion, was twice as good a player as Justin Langer.
All right, well, Damien Martin even stuck up for him, didn't he? He was one of the...
He probably had to as well.
He was one of the brigade.
Yeah.
What are you hearing in terms of a shortlist, Malcolm? Andrew McDonald, the interim coach, highly regarded, particularly amongst the players. But Trevor Bayliss, former New South Wales batsman and a very successful coach with England, is hovering in the background.
Yeah, look, I haven't heard Trevor's name mentioned in any dispatches in terms of a new coach. I mean, obviously there's been some speculation, and there was a couple of English journos during the Ashes sort of threw his name out there, given that he was a former England coach. But my understanding is that everyone's very happy with the current setup the way it is, with McDonald and Divenuto. Jeff Vaughan, get another assistant coach in there to help that group. They're very collaborative. They work well with the current players, and they have everything in the right place in that the captain's in charge, and they work with the captain and the senior players to make sure everything is in place. So I would have thought that the simple thing to do would be just to get another assistant coach or two and leave things as they were.
Yes, that's 4 coaches, Ian. Not 1, 4.
Well, now the players have got to take some of the blame, because, you know, I was on the Players Association for a while, and they wanted more of everything. And I think you can bet on the fact that the players want more coaches. Now, why do they want more coaches? Well, why do you need a coach? If you've got a fast bowler who's got a problem, ring Dennis Lilly, because he was a fast bowler. He knows what to do. If you've got leg spin problems, you ring Shane Warne, because he was a leg spinner. He knows what to do. But you don't need someone there 24 hours of every day to tell you, as far as I'm concerned. But the current players want that, so they've got to take some of the blame.
All right, let's talk about this series, because tours of the subcontinent, it's thrilling cricket to watch, isn't it? India, Sri Lanka, we haven't been to Pakistan for quite some time, but very different cricket to what we're used to seeing here in Australia. Let's have a look at the squad that is already in Pakistan and preparing, albeit in a very abbreviated way, for the first test, which starts on March 4. Pat Cummins, captain, obviously the bulk of the squad that was here during the Ashes, remains so. Mitchell Marsh comes in, Ashton Agar comes in, and a backup keeper there in Josh Inglis. Michael Neser as well was injured too, so he's been replaced by Mark Steckety, I believe, in the squad to tour. Anyone missing, obviously, or that's pretty straightforward?
It is, yeah, and really it's a good situation for Australia, because they've got a team that has just played some tough Test cricket, albeit England rolled over and didn't play very well. But they have played some Test cricket. So at this stage, for the first Test, Australia will have the team of their choice, which gives them a big advantage, because Pakistan have lost 2 players to injury, and they've just lost Harris Ruff has got COVID.
Yeah.
So they're losing players that they would want to play. And they're not going to be there. So that gives the advantage to me, to Australia. And the other thing about Australia is they've got a very good attack. They've got a terrific pace attack plus Nathan Lyon. And they've also got Green as a backup, and he's a useful medium pacer. So if you've got a good attack, you can build a Test team around that very quickly. and I think it gives you an opportunity to win when you've got a very good attack. So I think the situation probably favours Australia at the moment.
Okay. Love to pick your brain on how they incorporate spin into this attack. We'll do that in just a moment. But a big logistical exercise, Malcolm, just to get this tour going ahead from a security perspective. We've already seen a threat against Ashton Agar, which was ruled not to be credible. I think we've seen on a lot of occasions touring teams in Pakistan receive threats from outside the country to try to sabotage the tour. Is that the interpretation?
Well, that's the interpretation this time too, that someone from India has just sent a stray threat. There was no credibility placed on it, and unfortunately in the world of social media those things are going to pop up from time to time. But when you sort of talk about presidential security in Pakistan, well, don't forget that Imran Khan is the president, and he was one of the greatest cricketers ever walked the earth. So I think he'll be looking after the cricketers pretty well.
Is spin king in Pakistan? Most people think so, although when you think about Pakistani cricket, you think about Wasim Akram and Waqar Younis, of course. Here's a stat that shows spin isn't necessarily as effective in Pakistan as pace bowling. In the 6 test matches played there since 2019, pace bowlers in Pakistan have taken 89 wickets at 29 compared to 48 at 39 for the spinners. So you don't necessarily chock your team full of spin when you go over there. Is that how you read into it?
Well, the first thing you do is look at your team and pick your best team. And if that includes a spinner or more than one spinner, you pick them. But if your team is strong in pace, as this team is, then you pick your pace bowlers. And I think if you've got Pat Cummins, you've got Mitchell Starc, and you've got Josh Hazlewood, they'd be the 3 that I'm picking, certainly in the first test, because they're all very good bowlers. They're good bowlers under any conditions. And I think what you say to yourself is, all right, if you're going to bring in a second spinner, you've got to drop one of the quicks. So, OK, who do you leave out? Do you want to leave Hazlewood out, let's say, and you bring Swepson in? Now, the first thing I'm saying to myself is, do I think Hazlewood's a better bowler than Swepson? Answer, yes, big time. So I'm going to pick Hazlewood. Swepson, but then you need to look at the pitch, and if it totally favours spin bowling, well then you've got to think about Swepson and how do I get him into the team. And Australia have got that situation covered as well, because they can leave one of their quickies out and play Green as your third seamer, and then you've got Lyon and you've got Swepson. So I think Australia's got everything covered, but firstly I'm looking at levels of skill. Who's my best 11? That's the 11 I'm picking.
Well, here's the wonder of television for you, Ian. I can show you the pitch. Now, that doesn't look like it's got much in it to me.
Well,
she's flat.
You see, here's the problem. When I was captain, I only looked at the pitch on the morning of the game because I didn't want to make a mistake. And I remember that Bob Willis was captain of England, and he looked at the Adelaide Oval pitch 2 days, 48 hours beforehand. He said, this is a green top. I'm reading this in Sydney and I'm thinking, good luck, mate, because I've been going to Adelaide for a long time and I ain't seen no green tops.
Yeah.
And he still went ahead. Even though he said, oh, it's not the green top I thought it was, he went ahead, put Australia in, and Australia made 480. And that's your problem. So, and here's another problem you can have. We went to Jamaica in '73, and I looked at the pitch. This is his first test of the series. And George, I can't remember whether George was his first name or second name, but he was a long-time curator there. I looked and I said, well, there's no grass on this pitch. This will break up. And George just shook his head, no, it won't. And I said, there's no grass. He said, there's plenty of grass there. And I said, there's no grass. He said, it's underneath. Anyhow, we got 430 batting first, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go, we'll win this. West Indies got 400 and more, and we never really got through to the second innings. George was right, there was grass underneath. So
I don't think George has prepared this one, though, do you?
No, I don't think he has. But then you may find there's grass underneath and it'll hold together. So who knows? But one look at that would say, yeah, I'm going to bat first here.
I don't think they're sending them in. Well, what are you hearing? There's an intent or at least a desire to get Mitchell Swepson into this 11 at some stage?
Well, I think that obviously with subcontinental tours of Sri Lanka and India coming up in the next 12 months, they'll obviously want to try and do that. But they've got some real issues with their spinners because Mitchell Swepson's been sort of sitting around as one of the COVID/concussion sub-reserves, so he's hardly played. He's played 2 serious red ball games all summer.
I don't think he got a wicket in the last Shield game, did he?
He got one.
That's right. He's hardly got a wicket. He's in the whole summer, he's played 2 serious red ball games. Ashton Agar, who's over there as a third spinner, hasn't played first-class cricket for 12 months. So would you be better off picking, if you need to rest a quickie or one gets injured, you're better off playing Scott Boland, who bowls every ball at the top of off stump on a pitch that might increasingly get a bit up and down and eventually hit one on the pads and get them out. So I think the spinner's extra spinner would be an issue.
Let's have a chat about these Pakistan key players. A couple of world-class players in this team. If you haven't been following the Pakistan team very closely, they are a really good test side now. Babar Azam, who's taken over as captain. The average, Chappell, probably not what he'd like. I don't think he'll finish with an average of 43, but he's a seriously talented player. And we saw Shah Afridi tour Australia here a couple of years ago. World-class bowler, and the strike rate of 47 is absolutely elite.
Yeah, you picked their 2 best players there. Babar Azam, there are some players that you love watching bat, and he's one of them because he's beautifully balanced and he's a very good stroke maker. And it doesn't matter what form of the game he plays, it looks good. I'd liken him to a Mark Waugh, who was a player that I love watching. I like watching Babar Azam. Shaheen Afridi is a very good bowler. He's the best of the Pakistan bowlers, and he'll be the biggest danger for Australia. Now, it'll be interesting to see how Australia go about Shaheen Afridi, because he has shown if you attack him, he can bowl a bit loose. But if you let him bowl the way he wants to, then good luck.
Right.
So, we had Head playing against England in a very aggressive fashion. Now, if the Australians take that option, now they might cause him some problems, but then again, he might knock a few of them over. So that'll be interesting to see how the Australians go about it. But I think you've picked far and away the 2 best players for Pakistan. They've got some very good players, but I don't think they've got the depth of the Australian side.
I think the other one too, Malcolm, Mohammad Rizwan, the keeper batsman, he's probably up there with Pant in terms of leading keeper batsmen in the world at the moment.
Absolutely, and that's Pakistan's real strength is their batting. They've got some real gun batters in that side, and I think Australia batting at times can be a little bit flaky. So I think if Pakistan get a lot of runs early, put Australia under pressure, it could be quite interesting. The problem I think Afridi's going to have is not so much his performance, is the guys around him. They've got a couple of injuries. Their spinners, even though they're relatively old, they haven't played much, so I'm not sure how much support he's going to get from the other bowlers. So if the Australians can see him off and get through him, then there mightn't be much there.
So the Australians have only had a very limited preparation. I think, 3 or 4 days to get ready for this test match. Khawaja and Warner will open the batting for us, Ian. Usman, obviously born in Pakistan, but has evolved his game. He wasn't a great player of spin throughout the first part of his international career, but it seems like he's quite settled against it now.
I'm not convinced, no. In Pakistan, he might be fine. The other thing I'm not convinced about, I don't think they should be opening with Khawaja. I think that's a mistake. And
who would you have there?
Well, in Pakistan, it'll probably be fine. And you haven't got all that many options because I don't think Harris is really that good. The bloke I think who got unfairly dealt with, to me, was the left-hander Renshaw from Queensland. But he struggled to make runs. But they dropped him on poor first-class form, not poor Test cricket form. And I think if you're going to be dropped from Test cricket, it should be because you're showing poor Test form, not poor first-class form. Anyhow, that's another matter. Khawaja, I think, if he gets on something that really spins, you'll see those weaknesses will appear again. But I'm not sure that you'll see that in Pakistan. Sri Lanka and India, that could be a totally different kettle of fish. But Khawaja is probably the right bloke to open in Pakistan. they might have some problems, India and Sri Lanka.
And further to that, Travis Head had a great Ashes series, but in very different conditions.
Yeah.
He goes hard at the ball with hard hands. Is this a different proposition for him?
Well, a lot of players and a lot of media talk about the improvement that's been made. Now, the improvement could be there, but I'm dubious about it. Now, I need to see a lot more of Head under different conditions to be convinced that, yes, he's made some changes and there are some big improvements there. I think Head will always be the sort of player who has the odd bit of success, and when he plays well, he will score very quickly and he'll be very handy to the Australian side. But I still think my problem with Head is every batsman's got a hole there somewhere. You know, there's always a weakness. Everybody knows your weakness. It's a matter of whether they can find it. But Head, to me, has got about 4 or 5 weaknesses, and as a Test player, you shouldn't have that many. And I think one of the problems will be spin, but I'm not sure that that'll be a problem in Pakistan. But we might see something different, particularly India.
Well, you toured Pakistan in 1998. I'm surprised Mark Taylor isn't with us to talk about his memorable 334.
We could have shut him up pretty quickly. I think. Yeah.
But you wrote a wonderful piece in the Sydney Morning Herald and the Nine Press around the country of your recollections of that tour, along with some wonderful accompanying images. Take some time to take us through these.
Yeah, well, the images were taken by Mark Ray, who was actually the chief cricket writer at the time, and a very keen photographer. And there we are, at a guest house in Peshawar. That was an interesting one, obviously, with match fixing with Salam Malik. It was a terrific tour, honestly. It was 1998, was obviously before September 11, so you were able to get out a lot more, travel around a lot more. Mark Ray and I, that was up at the Khyber Pass. We managed to spend 3 or 4 days driving through Pakistan, went up, stayed at Peshawar, and were able to go out and mix and really enjoy ourselves. Unfortunately, I think the current team won't have that opportunity. They'll be locked away because of security and of COVID as well, obviously, so they won't be able to experience some of the great moments you can get on tour.
Picturesque country, though.
Oh, beautiful, and various contrasts.
People get a wrong impression about Pakistan. I've been there a couple of times, not as a player, as you mentioned, but they do everything they possibly can as far as security is concerned. So it won't, you know, if something happens, it won't be the lack of security. But what you've got to understand with Pakistan is they're very generous people. They understand the game of cricket. They're very keen on the game of cricket, and not just Pakistan cricketers. So obviously they love their local players, but they know a lot about all forms of the game, and so don't get the bad impression that it's tough in Pakistan, because it's a good place, and they do look after you.
All right, let's get some predictions. Starting with you, Ian. Most wickets, most runs, series scoreline. 3 Test series, and the first one starting from Friday.
Yeah, I'd go most wickets. I'd go Pat Cummins, because I think he's the best. He's the best bowler on the Australian side, and his only opposition would be Shaheen Afridi, but I think he's a better bowler, better all-round bowler, so I go with him. Babar Azam, I think, because he knows the pitches, I expect him to be the higher scorer, and you'll enjoy watching him bat. He's a really good batsman. A prediction of the series, I think Australia will win the series. I don't know what to predict the scoreline being, because I think there might be a draw or two along the way, but we don't know what the facilities are like. But I think Australia will win. Okay, Malcolm?
Well, I agree with Ian on Pat Cummins, best bowler in the world. He's ranked #1 for a reason, and I think we'll see that. Great skills, so even if the pitches are flat, he bowls very straight, and he does still do a bit with the ball off the deck. And I think Marnus Labuschagne at the top of his game. His insatiable appetite for runs, and I think that Pakistan's bowling, once you get through Afridi, I think that might fall away a bit, particularly with the injuries and illness that they've got. And I've gone 2-1 on the basis that I think both teams like to get on with it. They play a good, attractive brand, so the game will keep moving. And I think that Australia's batting's a bit flaky, so better bowling attack. I've gone 2-1 Australia.
I reckon we'll see the real Steve Smith stand up on this tour. I reckon once he gets in on that pitch, you'll need a crowbar to get him out.
Yeah, he's had a bit of a tough time of it. He's a very good player. He'll cop some bounces, but he'll have a method of coping with them.
All right, before we go, a sombre note. Terrible news about Rod Marsh. Obviously suffered a major heart attack a week or two ago. We just want to send our very best to him and his family. And I know a dear friend of yours. Very sad.
Yeah, he was a terrific teammate, very, very, very good wicketkeeper batsman. And we remained I used to see him regularly and we were good mates. And so it's been a tough time putting up with that. And the news hasn't been great. So I hope that there's some good news further down the track.
Yeah, well, there have been fewer tougher men in Australian cricket than Rod Marsh, so let's hope that he can mount a recovery. We wish him very well. Thanks for your time, gentlemen. I'm really looking forward to this series. Great to see Australia back in Pakistan. Look forward to reviewing it and looking at the second test next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
We'll see you then.